One of the most stressful parts about having irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, is that symptoms can be so unpredictable and you never know when you're going to have your next IBS symptom flare up. So a really good thing to have a handle on is your personal IBS symptom triggers. So today we're going to be talking about 3 common IBS symptom triggers, including dietary FODMAPs, stress, and also the menstrual cycle for people who have a menstrual cycle. So first things first, let's talk about dietary FODMAPs as IBS symptom triggers. And of course, I'm going to start with this because I'm a dietitian, so definitely going to go from the food angle first. But I keep saying the word FODMAPs, or the acronym FODMAPs, I should say, so maybe I should explain what that means. It's an acronym that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, which translation, those are basically just really fancy terms for different types of carbohydrates in common foods that can cause GI symptoms either by drawing water into the bowels or by increasing gas, which can lead to worsened IBS symptoms. Now, what foods are these FODMAPs or different types of carbohydrates present in? That's a really good question, and one that would probably take me 2 hours to answer comprehensively because the list is very long, because FODMAPs can be in different fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy products, also different sweeteners like honey or sugar alcohols like erythritol, for instance. So it's not as simple and clear-cut as one might think. Now, if you're not new to the whole diet and IBS space, then you've likely heard of something called the low FODMAP diet, which is a diet pattern that has the most evidence scientifically for helping to manage IBS symptoms. And it's broken down into 3 phases, with the first phase being the low FODMAP diet, where you restrict dietary FODMAPs using comprehensive resources that outline how much FODMAPs are in different foods at different doses and what have you. And then the second phase is where you test your tolerance of different FODMAPs. And then the final phase is the personalization phase, where the aim is to have as varied of a diet as possible, including the FODMAPs that you tolerate, or even including some that you maybe don't tolerate as well, up to a threshold where you've been demonstrated to tolerate that particular FODMAP. And this probably sounds really complicated and convoluted. It is. It's not something you want to do without oversight from a registered dietitian, but just wanted to give a very quick synopsis here. And I want to point out that, of course, there are other non-FODMAP related potential diet triggers that could be provoking IBS symptoms, but by far the most evidence seems to be in favor of FODMAPs being those premier IBS symptom provokers. So if you are having any sort of diet related IBS symptoms where it seems like your diet is triggering your symptoms, then definitely touch base with a registered dietitian who specializes in this area, because it may be the case that dietary FODMAPs could be causing some issues for you.
Before we continue, I want to quickly tell you about ibsprobiotics.org. So this started out as a research project, but then we ended up turning it into this really cool comparison tool. When you go on the site, you can easily compare which probiotics were most effective for different IBS symptoms, all exclusively based off of clinical studies. In fact, we spent the past 2 years building it, having analyzed over 50 different probiotics across more than 75 placebo-controlled trials. And the results surprised us. For example, we found that some really popular probiotics were nowhere near as effective as some lesser known options. And there were even some probiotics that seemed to do more harm than good. So I hope this free tool helps you to cut through the marketing hype and saves you a ton of time when evaluating a probiotic.
So the second trigger we're going to cover today is stress. And when I talk about stress, I mean any sort of psychological or physical stressor that can throw the body out of balance. So this can be psychological stressors like being in an emotionally abusive relationship, for instance, or physical stressors like having an infectious illness. Now, of course, not all stress is bad stress. For instance, exercise may be stressful on the body temporarily, but can also be a very beneficial and positive thing for health. But what I'm talking about are more like those chronic stressful circumstances or those really serious life events. And we know that chronic stressors or intense life events, traumatic events, can be things that are risk factors for developing IBS. And we also know that these stressors may also provoke IBS symptoms. Now, why would stress, particularly psychological stress, lead to an increase in IBS symptoms. And a lot of this comes back to the fact that IBS is classified as a disorder of gut-brain interaction, and our gut and brain communicate in this bidirectional fashion via the gut-brain axis. Stress seems to be able to provoke IBS symptoms through several mechanisms, one of which may even be increasing pain signaling. So this can result in painful IBS flare-ups. Now, of course, reducing stress where we can is always a great idea, though that's not always possible, as everyone out there who lives a normal life knows. But there are some different strategies related to psychological stress that you may want to explore if stress is provoking symptoms. These can be things like cognitive behavioral therapy or gut-directed hypnotherapy. And some people also seem to benefit from practices like yoga or meditation. And of course, it never hurts to try and avoid those unnecessary physical stressors like infectious illnesses through good hand washing practices, for instance, and also good food safety practices. And finally, the third trigger we're going to cover is the menstrual cycle, which applies to a lot of people out there, but not everyone. And when it comes to the menstrual cycle, this may be tied to symptoms for several reasons. It could be related to natural variations in hormones throughout a usual menstrual cycle, things like progesterone or estrogen, for instance, which may have a role in impacting GI motility. It can also be related to another class of compounds called prostaglandins, which play a role at the onset of your period with provoking uterine contractions, but may also lead to symptoms like diarrhea. So there was actually a 2010 meta-analysis that looked at 13 different studies to evaluate the effect of the menstrual cycle on IBS symptoms. And what they found is that all but 3 of the evaluated studies, so 10 of them, found an increased report of GI symptoms at the time of menses. So during the period, there seemed to be an increase in IBS symptoms. And the most significant symptoms were loose stools, bloating, abdominal pain, stool frequency, and other changes in bowel habits. So long story short, if you're having increased IBS symptoms around the time of your period, especially things like diarrhea or bloating, then you're definitely not alone. But of course, if these symptoms are really out of control and causing you a lot of challenges, then be sure to discuss that with your medical provider. And that's all I'm going to be covering on these 3 different IBS symptom triggers. But I am curious for those of you out there who have IBS and who know of their own personal triggers, what is your biggest IBS symptom trigger? If you feel comfortable sharing, we would love to hear from you in the comments section below.
Thanks for watching this video. And as a quick reminder, don't forget to check out ibsprobiotics.org. We're really proud of this research project turned comparison tool that we've made. And of course, it is free and publicly available. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest IBS research, you can follow me here. See you next time.